Well, you saw the title of this video. And yes, I do mean what I say here, because it is my belief that you should not be watching the Moana live action remake at all, or have anyone you know watch it. This movie is a vanity project disguised as a noble retelling of a story that's not even 10 years old and doesn't deserve it less than 2 years after its sequel. I've talked about this when it was announced before, and now seeing it more so after the trailers and its promotion, I have never been more vehemently opposed to the idea of Moana's live-action remake than I do right now, and I think you should too. There is just no logical reason for this film to exist in any form other than to blame one person who got it through, of course being Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. In no form is there any justification for calling for this film's existence compared to even the others, even if the timeline for adaptations have lessened into the abyss. Now, my feelings on remakes have kinda softened for the most part, to be honest, because as once they started, they couldn't stop, and they just have to do more to justify their wages as to why they even keep on making these movies again recently. But even more so, it's been turned into a disaster as Snow White proved. But even with all of Snow White's issues that are all controversial as hell, I have never been more incensed as proposed to this film's existence beyond all reason, because this one has nothing to do or to go for it at all other than to fill one man's ego and should not be taken in by the general public. If people know this channel's past, and myself, they know that I do care deeply about this. I have pride in Moana and Lilo because I am Hawaiian and Polynesian to that extent, so it's great that we have to cover these stories that I've known about my family's cultural history. But this is not it at all. This has nothing worth praising or saying on much because it works on the bones of what has already been built and is not even in the typical process that Disney does into making a live action film. Even Lilo and Stitch were years ahead into development before this film was even announced or was going to be made. For God's sakes, Tangled also was before this film in production, and the others prove how bad it is. Again, I will not be watching this film for the sake of my sanity and for the course correction to never dive into this unmitigated stupidity ever again. But again, let me just say it bluntly to remind everyone, this movie is a vanity project and nothing other than a vanity project. Like, in what world do you accept The Rock wearing this weird wig and calling himself Maui compared to his animated counterpart composited of Polynesian men? He doesn't fit the billing, yet he is the only returning star in this film from the original cast other than Jermaine Clement voicing Tamatoa again. And I say that meaning no disrespect to any of the cast like Catherine. I think she'll be a fine actress, but doing this with the new actors and just still The Rock does not sit right with me. We understand why Auli'i couldn't do it or felt like that, but I hardly find myself to be supportive of this film not actually having its original core cast back that is a mixture of Polynesians from Samoa, New Zealand, Hawaii, Tonga, and so forth. And going back to my vanity angle, again, the person who announced this stupid project was The Rock back in 2023 after his Black Adam disaster as the bombshell announcement that they were doing it, and he's the clear star of this film with his wig as Maui again. And I keep asking myself why? Why this and why now? The only answer here is just The Rock and only The Rock. Yes, Disney deserves full blame for doing this, but he is the one who sped up that timeline for something they probably didn't even think of doing before he said himself, where his frame of saying that this story is my culture and this story is emblematic of our people's grace and warrior strength also doesn't sit right with me because the original film already did that for us. Its beauty in animation and colors and spirits capture that grace and vibe that honors us in a magical Disney way, whereas this story tells nothing but sucks out all the life from its original form. It is a disgraceful use of it, and I cannot and will not accept that. I feel even more dishonored by its presence on those two levels of a redundant mess that has no shame in knowing what it was. And looking back on my point for this video, I know it won't stop anyone from seeing the film at all. People will do what they will do, and I will accept that, where it's just not my job to force you not to see this at all, but just my humble opinion that you should not because of what it was built under. This was not fashionable to do. The announcement for this film came only 7 years after the original was released, and now it comes out 9.5 years after such original release, making it harder to justify any weight to its currency. And that is a fact worse than the mediocrity that it can be. This film is the antithesis of good heart and weight. Sure, some people can like this film, with many do, but it doesn't mean it will always be a good idea, as Snow White showed with its bomb, or the bigger controversial aspects of The Little Mermaid. Also, you guys at Disney screwed yourself when you made Moana 2 into a movie from its Disney Plus origin, which of course managed to make $1 billion based on the original streaming viewership, but kind of fell flat to lump toward that as it was reviewed lesser than the original on that basis it was a show. So you're just gonna see this go down this slope of mediocrity, rewarding nonsense for a story that should have deserved better, and you hardly have done right by making this where people can only say why. We just saw the damn sequel to this 2 years before where there's no reason you should be making that, because at least audiences can justify seeing films 2 decades or older because they haven't appeared on the big screen in years, where this is just smack dab in the middle. What also doesn't help is the fact that The Rock announced Moana 3 is in development for Disney. So after this lifeless shell, we're just gonna go back to the animation again. I mean, don't get me wrong, the end credits already showed that they had more to say with the villains anyway, but this still is a dent in the road that doesn't help towards the Moana 3. And the tracking and interest for this film suggests that this is mediocre, showing that you should not have done this. But it doesn't matter because 3D films have already been remade if we go by the universal precedent of remaking How to Train Your Dragon. Yet how the look and feel of this particular film is just downright awful on all metrics. That because of this attitude, it should fail to teach them a lesson. People shouldn't see it to remind you that you can't just rush art or products, since this is not art nor a product I would want to buy. And I've said this myself as a Disney fan throughout the years. I want them to make better movies and quality for everything, because I'm a pragmatic fan. I don't see everything as black and white. I don't see Disney as either evil or wholly good, because it's neither. It's a company doing business, but the wrong kind of business that incentivizes doing nothing when its passion for stories by the people that work there are already there. I've said this before, but doing things like this just validates a certain crowd in their worldview. Disney does have its ups and downs as a company, and this is one of those points, and they should, so they can realize they need to do in service of the audience that is appealed for generations. And doing things like that have surely forgotten that and has made a product weaker and ineffective. This film just doesn't appeal to any generations. The kids who saw Moana originally are not much older as teenagers, and the kids who saw Moana 2 are still kids. For example, I was 15 when I saw the original Moana, and now I'm 24, and there's little difference in that frame from that time. Remakes are built on nostalgia, and Moana does not live on that because it's still a young child at this point in a technological age. It is not nostalgic in the way that The Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast are today, and it's just pathetic to be doing things like this, where it really doesn't matter if you have Lin-Manuel Miranda back to do the songs. It doesn't matter if you design the film well enough. It doesn't matter that The Rock pushed for it. It just matters that you have not done anything worthy to make people see this film, and it's on you to think that people are just eager to want this as a sound strategy. Where yes, Moana deserves its large franchise and attention, but not for this. Yes, it has become the most streamed Disney movie out there, even surpassing Frozen as to why even Moana 2 got made, but this is not what people want, where you have not to give them enough to chew on for this film to even have support in an already CGI infested film, where the water looks better in the original and interactive in its form. And you cannot think that The Rock wearing a horrible wig like he's in an SNL skit is any better. This is just a simple, cold truth to be told. His appearance just looks like The Rock, and only The Rock in a weird environment with hair. And honestly, his hair was better in The Scorpion King, and his CGI was better there too. But anyways, there's nothing else to say beyond that point, because I will just circle back into what I've already said. There's no stopping Disney into making other remakes, because that has already been planned, and they've already made their bed into doing so since 2010 with Alice in Wonderland. No matter what happens, that will just be the way it goes. But it is my belief that doing this is a despicable act of self-righteous nonsense to think you could just create this and call it a passion project that is noble of a story. It's not, and has never been. It's already been told, and it's already been done, and there's nothing more to say on it. The two-way street of making it either unique or just the same with The Rock inside it, where it will only be judged solely on that point and nothing more than that, despite the good the actress can do. I do not hate all of them. I don't even hate The Rock personally myself, but I hate thinking that doing this is good for anyone. It's not. Especially if the possibility of this loses any money. That's all I have to add, where what can I say except you're not welcome. I'm all done. Goodbye.